This is TV 10 and 55 Focus, a program dealing with issues affecting everyone on Long Island and the tri-state area. Now your host, Richard Rose.
Hi, I'm Richard Rose. Welcome to Focus. It is our pleasure to have as our guest Richard Schaffer. He's the new and the old Babylon Town Supervisor. We'll get into how that all happened in a moment. Also want to welcome our co-host today, and that is Kevin Law. He's the President and CEO of the Long Island Association. Welcome, Kevin.
Thanks, Rich.
So let's talk about that. You're the Babylon Town Supervisor again. How did that all come about?
It's almost like Back to the Future and Michael
Yes.
J. Fox. What happened was when Steve Ballone was elected county executive, he had to vacate his position as the Babylon Town Supervisor. And under Babylon Town law, there is no special election. The election takes place at the next general election, but the town board needed to appoint someone to take his place for this year. So the town board back in January appointed me to fill in that position, and I would then have to run in November to serve out the remaining 1 year left on Steve Ballone's term, which runs through the end of 2013.
Already know whether you want to continue on. So you'd have to win that election to get the last year?
The voters get,
Right.
the voters get a shot at selecting who will serve the remaining 1 year on Steve's term, and I'm going to run in this November's election. I've committed to doing that, and we wait to see what the voters have to say. If the voters are satisfied with the job that I'm doing and want me to continue doing that for the remaining 1 year, then I'll make a decision after that as to whether or not I would continue going on forward.
You see it sometimes in the blogs, some people in the town saying there should have been a special election. Why not a special election? And you're also staying as a Suffolk County Democratic Party chairman. Any conflict there?
Well, I think two issues. One is a special election really would have been costly for the Board of Elections to hold. The county pays that bill, and right now we'll get into that a little bit later on. The county's facing a very serious financial deficit. And two, in terms of me doing both jobs, I did both jobs at the front end of this. When I was the town supervisor between 1992 and 2001, I was elected Suffolk County Democratic Committee Chair in 2000. So I served for 2 years as both the supervisor and the Suffolk County Democratic Committee Chair. At that time, I didn't find any conflict. In fact, elected officials of both parties were satisfied with the way I carried myself as both the supervisor and my commitment to the taxpayers of the town of Babylon, as well as my commitment to the Democratic Party. And you can talk to people like Senator Owen Johnson, a Republican leader in the state Senate, who was very satisfied with the way it worked out because he knew that I was working on behalf of the taxpayers when I was a supervisor and didn't let the politics interfere with our relationship or anything that had to get done on behalf of the taxpayers.
And you're not the first one to do that. Plenty of other elected officials have held similar posts, both a party post and an elected post.
It's funny, I spoke to Joe Mondello, who is still the Nassau County Republican chair and who at one time had served for about 5 years as the Hempstead presiding supervisor. And I asked him just how did you handle things, and we talked about specific issues and things that would come up, but he said that it all comes down to time commitment and how much you can put into both of the jobs and how much would that be wearing on you as a person as opposed to any ethical conflicts that arise. And quite frankly, I'm an attorney, and we all face decisions every day as to how we have to respond in our jobs. And what I've committed to the town and to the party is that I'm going to handle everything on a case-by-case basis, and I think I can do that.
The one thing that does pop up as a possibility in my mind is, you might have to make some sort of negotiation with Republicans in the town of Babylon, and that maybe that's a person to be an opponent of a Democratic candidate that you're advising on getting elected to that position or re-elected, or it might be in some sort of a race against them. Any problem there, you think?
Well, what I've done is I've built in a couple of protections. One is I have a first vice chair of the Democratic Party, Bob Strickoff, who would handle anything having to do with the town of Babylon candidates. So I'm not involved directly in any of those discussions. The other thing I've done in terms of fundraising is I put a prohibition on anyone who works for the town of Babylon, does business or has a contract with the town of Babylon, or has an application before the town of Babylon cannot contribute to the Suffolk County Democratic Committee, and they have to sign a statement that says that they do not have any business or work for or have an application before they donate to the party. So it's a voluntary prohibition that we've put in place. It's almost like my own campaign finance reform that we've enacted to make sure that there are absolutely no conflicts that occur.
Rich, you mentioned before where Steve Bellone, our new county executive, has walked into quite a financial mess at the county level. What type of condition did he leave you in the town of Babylon as you now have taken over the reins of the town of Babylon?
Well, he and I joke about that because he says that he's glad to have left me in a very good condition as opposed to what he's walked into. The town of Babylon's got the highest bond rating in the county from Moody's and Standard & Poor's and the rating agencies. We're AA plus, and in terms of our surplus, we've got a healthy surplus that's allowed us to do some of these innovative projects that Steve Bellone has created. Look, we're facing the same pressures that other municipalities are facing in terms of rising pension costs, rising health care costs, loss in mortgage tax revenue. All of those things are in play in the budget. But I have to tell you, after spending about a month and a half there now and taking a look at the situation, we're in very good shape. The past 2 years, he's been able to cut taxes for town residents by close to $7 million. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to continue that trend, possibly reducing residents' garbage fees later on this year. We're getting ready to, after 20 years, rebid our residential garbage collection service contract. And we're expecting to see a savings in that we'll be able to pass on to our residents. So it's my hope that we'll be able to continue our good budget practices that he enacted over the past 10 years, continue to cut fees for our residents, and continue to maintain a stable budget outlook for the near future.
So Steve Bellone left the town in real good condition for you.
Very good condition.
But you still have the challenges like all of our other municipalities have going forward.
Absolutely. And the thing is, Kev, one of the things we've talked about is the thing that he really did well was invest in the infrastructure in the town. He did a lot of parks improvements, a lot of road improvements, things that we weren't able to do when I was there the first time because we were fighting to create the commercial garbage district, which allowed us to get to the strong financial position that we're in now. We want to continue those infrastructure improvements, and with the pressures that we're facing on all these other areas, we want to make sure that we can continue those infrastructure improvements while at the same time keeping costs down for our residents.
Yeah, and here we see Steve Bellone, and very successful candidate winning that office following Steve Levy, and you of course were heavily involved as the Suffolk Democratic Party chairman in helping to get him elected. Now you hear these whispers that there's a huge budget deficit about to be announced by Steve, and it seems like he's preparing us, saying he expects grim news. Been a lot of statements like that. Some people whispering as much as $200 million. You worked very closely with him. What is he telling you?
Well, he's telling me that the county is in really difficult financial straits. And look, Kevin and I have both served in the county. Kevin was a chief deputy county executive. I was a county legislator during the Halpin administration when the last time we experienced serious budget problems. I think those are going. This problem that we're going to see is going to be probably 10 times worse than what we experienced then, and we're looking at probably close to $400 million of a deficit. These are Nassau numbers, Nassau-like numbers. And I'm not getting this directly from Steve Bellone, but I'm hearing it from a lot of people who are involved in the discussions. And I'm not going to. We're going to allow the panel that he's put in place to review all of the information and reveal that. But if we're looking at $350 to $400 million deficit, that is astronomical in comparison to what we thought it was going to be, and makes it that much more difficult on how to solve that problem.
Wow, that is a big number, and that's the first time I've heard that, and that's one we're going to have to pursue as to what the implications are for Suffolk taxpayers if it does even remotely approach that number. When we continue with our guest, Richard Schaffer. Stay with us.
TV 10 and 55 Focus now continues.
And we're back with our guest, Richard Schaffer, the Babylon Town Supervisor, and my co-host Kevin Law, President and CEO of the LIA. We just finished off with your saying that you're just hearing from sources, and you'll let the county executive, Steve Bellone, announce officially, but that you would not be surprised to see the budget deficit approach $350, $400 million. quite a bit more than some of the estimates that were just starting to be whispered about. I said 200 million. When Steve Levy went out of office, the notion that was being thrown around was 134 million. How did it get so big, and how do you avoid raising property taxes in that environment?
Well, look, there's a couple of problems you've now got the 2% property tax cap. So if you raise the county general fund by 2%, that's $2 million. That doesn't get you much money to solve a $350 to $400 million problem. How did it get that way? I don't know all of the particulars, but I can only gather by piecing together little snippets of what I hear. When you don't settle with the correction officers, and they've been without a contract since 2007, and you're supposed to be budgeting money each year to pay any increases that they're going to be awarded, you're looking at $50 million right there for correction officers' contract. That's got to be settled by law. That has to be paid for, and that should have been budgeted for over the years. So we're going to be able to start pointing out that where we've watched the former county executive talk about what a wonderful budget manager he's been, he hasn't told you the full story, and that's unfortunate because that's what usually ends up happening in government. People end up telling you that they're wonderful and they're going to keep your taxes low and continue to provide services for you, but they're not going to tell you all the dirty little secrets about how they're not going to budget for a $50 million expenditure like a correction officer's contract. So that's how you get to $350, $400 million. And again, we'll wait for the panel to come out. They're the experts. They're reviewing all that. They'll put an exact number on it. And then the tough part's going to come. How do you deal with all of that? Look, the county legislature funded 650 positions through June 1st of this year. So there are 650 people working for the county who might not be working for the county after June 1st. They've got to come up with a way to deal with that, plus the deficit that they're facing. A lot of tough challenges, but I got to tell you, the guy who I think's up for that is Steve Bellone. Based on what I've seen he did over the past 10 years in Babylon, and all of the improvements he made from when I left in 2001, plus how he's been able to handle himself just in the first month and a half and putting together a great transition, plus getting into office to deal with these daunting challenges. I think he's the man up for the job.
Right. Rich, moving back to the town, not everybody gets a chance to go back and do something over again. I'm sure there were things you didn't get a chance to do when you were Babylon supervisor the first time around. What is it that you're going to focus your time on now during your second tour of duty as the supervisor of the town of Babylon?
Yeah, and you're exactly right. And that's why if you would have asked me this a year ago, whether or not I would want to go back, I would have thought you were crazy. But as I got to really see what Steve had done over the past 10 years as a town supervisor, got involved in the projects that he's put in motion and put in place, I said I wanted to be part of that. And what I think a couple of things I want to do is I want to continue the parks improvements that he's done. He's done major work on our bay beaches at Tanner and Venetian, as well as out at our ocean beaches at Cedar and Gilgo and Overlook. So I want to continue. He's got a capital program in place that needs to be finished. He's got the Wyandanch Rising project, which is a terrific program that he's put in place. $30 million has been pieced together from county, state, federal, and not-for-profit agencies of funding that's being poured into this project, where we're taking a blighted community that was left and ignored for so many years and revitalizing it, creating a transit-oriented development around the Wyandanch train station, 240 residential, both rental and owner-occupied units are going to be created, retail space, a public area. In fact, the governor himself, his committee awarded the project $6 million, one of the largest award out of the Long Island share that, Kev, you chaired for the governor earlier this year, late last year. And so
through the LIA, you've been very involved in that.
Absolutely, right. And very supportive. But this project is going to really be, once it gets going, and we're going to break ground later this year, this project can be the measuring stick for how to do this downtown revitalization, right, transit-oriented development across New York State.
That's right. Great. We were really excited about the Wyandanch Rising project, and we had commended Steve Bellone for doing it. So it's I'm happy to hear that you're going to continue to make it a priority of your administration. And
we want to pick up on, he had outlined similar projects to be done in East Farmingdale with 110. In fact, Steve and I met with a a very large company that's interested in relocating to the 110 corridor. Based on the East Farmingdale version of Wyandanch Rising, with the Republic Railroad Station possibly being reopened at Airport Plaza. And he's done a similar study in Copeg that we've been working with groups like the Copeg Chamber of Commerce and the Copeg Kiwanis on creating another transit-oriented development in the Copeg train station area. So I want to help finish those projects and continue to take advantage of the efficiencies that he built in through technology. When I left, we didn't have email, we didn't have GPS, we didn't have any of the tracking systems that he's put in place for our complaints that come in from our residents. And so I want to continue to build on that, make our government more user-friendly, more available to the public, take advantage of all these apps and iPhones. I'm just learning my iPad that I got for Christmas and how to take advantage and how to make that more interactive so that we can cut down the wall that exists between local government and taxpayers and make them feel less intimidated about inquiring about things with their town government or taking advantage of the services that we offer.
Do you see that we've had any kind of breakthrough in persuading not just towns but residents who go to town board meetings and have votes that downtown transit-oriented development is the way to go for Long Island?
I think from what I've gotten from what they did in the town of Babylon over the past 10 years, and they spent a lot of time meeting with community groups, vetting all of these projects, and the reaction that they've gotten from people. I think, at least in the town, I can only speak for the town of Babylon, what I've seen, I think, yes, there's a breakthrough on understanding the importance of it, and it's the future. Because if you want to create this, what we call the affordable housing for young professionals who are just graduating from college, giving them a place to stay, the best way to do that is to locate it around a railroad, getting in and out of Manhattan or coming vice versa the opposite way, and being able to live there and having all of their amenities located in that area. That's the wave of the future. And I think that he's proven it in the town of Babylon. We're going to see how successful it's going to be once we get the project rolling in the Wyandanch area. Okay, well, we have a lot more we'd like to talk to our guest about, Richard Schaffer, along with my co-host Kevin Law from the LIA. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
TV 10 and 55 Focus continues.
And welcome back. Here with our guest, Richard Schaffer, Babylon Town Supervisor. My co-host, Kevin Law, is going to ask a question here now. Kevin?
Rich, everybody's talking now about governments collaborating and working together. And so it's obviously you're going to have a good working relationship with the county executive. But what about your neighboring towns, like the town of Islip or the town of Huntington? Have you had a chance yet to meet with those town supervisors and to maybe work on some things together? Yeah,
and actually, Kev, I picked up on where I left off when I was supervisor the last time. I had a great relationship with my adjacent colleagues. In fact, I've spent some time with John Venditto from the town of Oyster Bay, the longtime supervisor there. He and I had a great relationship when I was first supervisor, and already talking about some things going on over in the Farmingdale area where our borders intersect. And also Tom Croce, I had an opportunity to spend a nice lunch with, the new supervisor of the town of Islip. Really had never met him before and had a great discussion, both personal and public issues oriented. And I got to say, I'm excited about working with him on some mutual projects of concern. Particularly, he's looking at the Heartland development, which backs up onto our border over in the Deer Park area. And so we were talking about some ideas on that because he's got to face that right away, as to how to get that thing moving to create jobs in a cost-effective, efficient manner that's not going to jeopardize traffic or public safety in the area. So
that's great to hear. Yeah, you know, come from the business community's perspective, we always like to see people working together: Democrats, Republicans, towns, villages, and counties. I had the pleasure of meeting with Tom Croce too. Seems like a bright young guy. Sounds like he's going to be a really good supervisor. Yeah, so good luck with that.
And I told him he was lucky he's got a 4-year term as opposed to my 3 minutes that I've got. So.
He was on the show not more than a month or so ago, and he did talk about things like that. Seemed like he wanted to work in a bipartisan manner. I mean, he's still a Republican, but he was clearly wanting to move ahead on on issues that would help people get jobs.
You know,
and what is the number one
someone asked me that yesterday. What's the difference between Democrat and Republican on a local level? There isn't much difference. I mean, we wear our stripes, but there's only one way to pick up the garbage or to plow the snow. And so I think once the election's over, and this is what I stressed to Tom when he and I met, once the election's over, we have to work together because our future's at stake here. If we all don't get our act together and come up with solutions to these problems, putting people back to work, keeping taxes down, providing low-cost services, we're all going to end up in trouble, and then we won't have to worry about politics after that.
Well, I know one of the biggest problems facing the towns as well as the county is the pension payments that are now being required because for a number of years the payouts were matched by huge returns on Wall Street that are not there. So what do you think should be done about pension reform? These costs that to each town and to the county in particular are huge.
Huge, and the county obviously more so than the town, but that's one of the pressures that I mentioned earlier when Kevin was asking me about the budget that we're facing, the increase in pension costs. And look, I think the governor is right on target when he is made a proposal that needs to be debated and discussed and authorized by the state legislature. But the fact that he's finally pushing the proposal to the front burner as opposed to how many years have we been talking about pension reform? Everyone's talked about it. No one's ever offered up anything. And thank God we've got a governor who's finally put a proposal on the table and has said we need to address this issue. If you don't like my proposal, come up with one that's going to help local governments manage this outrageous cost, and let's fix it. So I'm supportive of what the governor is looking to do because he's talking about it and he's willing to get something approved through the legislature that's going to provide us with some relief going forward. You know, when we've renegotiated our bargaining agreements between our blue-collar and our white-collar workers in the town of Babylon under Steve's leadership, he's made sure that he's built in cost efficiencies into that. There's been minimum numbers set in terms of staffing. He's been able to reduce staffing through attrition, both retirement and people who just leave on their own and go on to another job. And so he's been able to do that locally, but we need the relief on the pension, and I'm glad the governor's finally taking the bull by the horns and putting it out there for us.
You know, another big issue that popped up this past couple of weeks, Tom Spota joining in with, he's Democratic District Attorney in Suffolk County, joining in with Sheriff DeMarco, and also Judy Pascal, the county clerk, saying that their position should not be term limited under a resolution that was passed in Suffolk County. Explain that issue. Do you agree with them? They're appealing that, saying that they should not be facing term limit.
Well, they're not saying that they're not saying that they shouldn't be term limited. What they're saying is that term limits were enacted incorrectly for their three positions.
Well, this shouldn't affect their jobs.
Well,
their positions that they are now holding.
Right, but what the county did back in 1993 was they enacted a term limit law across the board for county legislators, county executive, and the other countywide offices, including sheriff, clerk, and district attorney. Sheriff, clerk, and district attorney are all three constitutional officers. They're found in the state constitution, and only New York State can change anything having to do with their terms. So if you want to change the terms of those three positions, you have to amend the state constitution, which is the state legislature and the voters of New York State. You can't just do it county by county, otherwise you poke holes in the state constitution. So what the lawsuit is about is not about getting rid of term limits. They're saying you haven't enacted term limits correctly for our three positions. So they're asking for a judge to rule on that. And I strongly support it because I don't believe it was enacted correctly. I strongly support term limits for the other positions because they were enacted correctly. The county legislature approved a resolution and the voters of the county spoke and said, we want those positions term limited.
So if Tom Spota is successful, and it gets overturned for their positions, the term limit law will still apply to the county executive, the county controller, and the county treasurer, is that correct?
And the county legislators.
Great.
So all those term limits would stay in effect, which they should because the voters of our county spoke and said we want those positions which we have direct control over term limited. The three positions in the state that are in the state constitution, and by the way, every other county that has enacted term limits specifically excluded the sheriff, clerk, and district attorney because including New York City, New York City term limits did not affect those 3 positions because they said they're state constitutional officers.
All right, well, that'll have to be the last word. We're out of time, but we want to thank you for having joined us today. Richard Schaffer, Town Supervisor for Babylon and the Suffolk County Democratic Party Chairman. I want to thank our co-host as well. He's Kevin Law, President and CEO of the Long Island Association. And thank you for being there. I'm Richard Rose. Be sure to see us next week for yet another edition of Focus.